On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
I'll take a good person that's trying and try to find a fit rather than somebody who's cocky and not a good team player who's competent.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in. What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I've got Bob Lovinger here on the King stage. Bob, how are you doing, brother?
Hey, Chaz, great. I'm so glad to be here. I'm excited that you're having me.
I am excited that we're having you as well because you just already made my Monday, man. We were just talking off stage. You said that you got a little curious and you checked out the pod. You've been listening to it before you jumped on here. And you just totally made my day, so I appreciate that.
I love the podcast. Such great stories. Everybody has a unique perspective on things, and it's a great 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good feedback. And we're going to deliver the same thing today with your story. So I'm excited for that. Tell us what kind of business that you have first.
FLEXXBUY is a customer financing fintech platform. So we provide businesses with a loan platform that they can provide their customers that either can't afford to pay or prefer to pay some other way than their cash or credit cards. And our difference that from the beginning that we set up is we provide our service to all size businesses, all type of selling. We pretty much democratize this industry. Prior to us, the customer financing arena was isolated to certain verticals like retail or medical, certain size businesses. And we went in there and said, the small size, the new business, they deserve to have the same kind of weapons as everybody else. And so we have a platform of over 30 lenders in there. And if a business, whether it's an attorney, a home improvement company, it's across all verticals, doesn't make a difference. We go up to $100,000. If they have someone who just can't pay, they can turn them onto our platform, put an application in. Within seconds, they get answers.
Yeah, I love that. And so useful, especially in today's environment, which you're talking about. Obviously, it doesn't have to be just that they can't pay. It's just that maybe it's more advantageous to pay a different route.
Well, I think people are very uncertain right now. Between inflation and everything else, people are just not sure how their money is going to hold up. They prefer to compartmentalize their transactions. And the other side of it is, I'm not going to sterilize it. We're finding our challenges too because the lenders are pulling back a little bit. They're tightening the ropes. They're not as certain that the people that they're looking at is really what they see. So it's a complicated environment, and that's why we just don't provide our clients with one lender. We provide them with 30 lenders because you just never know which ones are going to be hot and which ones are going to be cold at any given moment.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that approach of guaranteeing, for lack of better terms. I know you probably don't guarantee an approval, but
forbidden word.
Yeah, exactly. But what you're doing is that you're throwing the net out wide enough to make sure that if this person's going to get approved, we're going to find the opportunity. And like, how can you blame a lender for tightening things up? Because man, there's a lot of people out there that don't say and act right. And then they try to be somebody different. We've had this experience even inside of our own business.
Well, as it was explained to me from a lender, when they're looking at somebody's credit score into 700 credit score, which is under most circumstances is considered a very good credit score, they don't know sometimes if it's a 700 on the way down or 700 on the way up because people are in flux. We saw some of this during the initial outbreak of COVID where the lenders tighten up. My hope is that things will stabilize and lenders will get their footing and normalize. The great thing about our platform also is it's all soft credit pulls. So somebody could put an application in, no harm, no foul. If they don't like the offers, it's not as though it costs them anything. There's no harm to their credit report whatsoever. So we think we have a pretty significant a solution for businesses to not only from a practical standpoint solve a sale, but also pull people in utilizing financing. Because a lot of people these days that know they're going to make a major transaction and know they don't want to spend their money, are out there specifically looking for financing.
Yeah.
So it's very important for businesses to, to put it out front.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I had a guy on my podcast, I don't know, probably 4 months or so ago. And I think they're doing 25, 30 million. And he said one of the key things that changed everything for them is that they no longer presented cash offers. Pay for this HVAC system, pay for this coaching, pay for this, whatever it is, upfront, 15K, 50K, whatever the number. But they presented in financing first.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
so leading with that.
Yeah, think about it. How many cars would be sold if the only option was give me $30,000 of your money? And the
Right.
car companies will lead with, this car isn't 30,000. They'll change the paradigm. This car is $359 a month, because people can wrap their brain around that.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. Good stuff. Okay. I want to know, before we get into the story of how the business started and your history, why at this level? Obviously, you've been successful. You made it through our interview process. But my question is, why? Like, why are you pressing even at this level? What's really got you out there fighting every single day for the next level?
It's because I love it, really. Listen, every business owner has their moments where they hate it. We all have that. By about Monday at noon, you say, what did I get myself into? But overall, I really love the business. And I've created an environment which it didn't start out this way, but over the last number of years, it's become a legacy business. My son has been with me for 5 or 6 years. He's essentially my chief technology officer. My daughter graduated from law school, and I convinced her to come and join me rather than become a lawyer, and she's my chief operating officer. I made it all in the family, and it's a lot more pressure that way too. I have a lot of households depending on it now, but I just love it. And listen, things can happen. I don't foresee myself retiring ever. Hopefully I'll cut back a little bit, but I just enjoy it. I wouldn't do it otherwise. I've learned that lesson the hard way.
I resonate. I think a lot of listeners do with what you're saying, but to have you with your son and daughter in the business, I think is a lot of entrepreneurs' dream, really. And whether that works out or not for some, but my oldest daughter's almost 9, and my youngest daughter is 3 months, and 3 daughters and 1 son. And I'm thinking of every day, it's a growing obsession. How do I build them? They can build businesses or do real estate deals or whatever the scenario is. And so hearing you like doing the thing that I'm over here masterminding about is really encouraging. What would you say to a guy like me or a listener out there who's got younger kids and they're dreaming one day that we can do business together? Because that's really what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, it's interesting because my son and I have fired him on 3 different occasions from other businesses, so we had friction over the years. I'm big into sports and athletics. My daughter is the one that's big into sports and athletics. My son wasn't. He's technology and music, and that's great, but we just didn't see it. But my advice to parents is, don't sweat over those things you think are important when a kid is 9 years old, because at the end of the day, they're not going to be that important, and just play it out. And now my son and I are best friends, and we have a very close family. He lives right down the block from me. Our daughter lives not too far. I was as bad as anybody. As I was out there watching my daughter playing tennis, and she had to kick me off the sidelines once because I was too whatever. And I look back at it, what difference did that make? My biggest advice is just teach them what you know and be there for them. Just don't sweat those small things.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's so simple, but so profound, is usually what I end up saying on this podcast. I think a lot. The workings, the inning out, day in and day out, working with your kids as grown adults. Just give me 30 seconds on that. Like that gets me fired up. I may be totally weird, but I want to do deals with my kids. I don't know.
Oh, it is so, first on my son, it is so cool because over the years, I have an engineering background, and I'll go over that, but I graduated college as an electrical engineer, but that was many years ago. I've always thought like a tech person, I just didn't have the skill set to do it. And my son came to my company and didn't have that either. He knew a lot of stuff, but he didn't know how to program. And over the last 3 years or so, he's really dove in and taught himself how to program. And it's great having somebody by your side where you can come up with an idea and say, you know what, I'd like to see this happen, and he goes out and does it. And it's such a great dynamic. And my daughter and I, she runs the people. And the thing I suggest to business owners is know your core competency and to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. And one of the things I'm not that great at is managing people. I'm not good at training. I do it, because I have to, but she has stepped in and taken that off of me. And as she also has a marketing background. So it's just been a pleasure. And not to say you don't have your moments, because like you do with every employee where you mutter under your breath, but I like to put people that I trust and really can rely on around me. And what better source than your own kids?
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's talk about your history a little bit. Was this the first business? Is there a track record of different businesses here? Give us an idea of your history here.
Yeah, go back. From my childhood. An unlikely success story per se. My parents were immigrants. They were refugees essentially. My father escaped World War II, escaped the Nazis. He lost two siblings. My mother,
Wow.
a few years later, came to this country escaping the communists, and neither one of them had much education. And so growing up, I had nobody really overseeing me when it came to education. I don't remember my parents ever going to a teacher parent conference or anything like that. They did their best, but that wasn't in their repertoire. They didn't know that was
Right.
the thing that they had to do. And I was just a mediocre student. And
Yeah.
fortunately, though, I grew up in a neighborhood, a block specifically, where there were a ton of kids and we were very competitive. And I made a couple of them my role models. And by the time I got to high school, even though I was still a mediocre student, college was never in question for me. So I went to my guidance counselor, even though my grades were mediocre. My counselor said to me, "You should consider a trade school." And I said, "No, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get into the engineering school." And I found literally, I think the only engineering school in the country that would take me, because they weren't yet accredited. So they couldn't, the students that really deserved to go probably wouldn't have selected them. I got in, they got accredited during my freshman year. And
Boom. He's in.
to make a long story short, I graduated in 4 years. I think I was the only one of this beginning class to actually do that. And I had to, because my wedding day was on my graduation day. So I had to graduate so I could go to work. And
Yeah.
in engineering is a bearer of a curriculum that teaches you a lot from the standpoint of problem solving. And
Oh yeah.
I went out and worked as an engineer for 2.5 years. And to make a long story short, the company I was with at the end, I joined and they announced that they were going to move to Arizona. I was in Long Island at the time. And I just saw over a series of a year, HR bringing boxes over to these engineers that were with the company for 20 years and telling them to pack their box and leave. And I said, it doesn't sound like my story. I'm not really enjoying being an engineer. I'm not really that good at it. I'm probably a mediocre engineer. So I was looking for other things. And one night I was watching when I was married already, I was watching late night TV, and I saw a infomercial on buying a house with no money down or little money down, or whatever the topic was. And so I went out and said, you know what, I'm going to buy a house. So I went into contract to buy a house. I found a house and I looked for who to work with. And I found this father and son team. The father was a lawyer and the son was a recent Yale graduate who was running the mortgage company. So I said, you know what, I'll get two for the price of one, and I'm going to get a mortgage through the guy. And I ended up becoming very close to the son. And because I wasn't happy as an engineer, when I finally got my I was like literally the last one to shut the lights out for the company. I said, you know what, can I come work with you and see if I can contribute? I said, I'll tell you what, I'll spend $1,000 a week putting an ad into the New York Times, and that will be my leads coming in for mortgages. And I did that, and I ended up 75% of the leads coming in were my leads. So they ended up taking that away from me and paying for the ad and just feeding me some leads. But I never went back to engineering. I just loved the service business. I loved finance. Ended up staying friends with him, but I left on my own and opened up my own mortgage company.
Wow.
And did okay with mortgages, and I did a few other financial things down the road. And then in about 1995, I opened up a company called Edge Solutions. And what was happening at that time, and I don't know if you're too young to remember the economy then, but the mortgage industry had really started to tighten up in certain aspects. But the refinance boom was on. And what was happening is a lot of people were trying to refinance their houses, but they had debt because there was a big credit card explosion leading up to that. So they had all kinds of debt, some charge-offs, judgments, all that kind of thing. So while I was still doing the mortgages, I was getting on the phone and negotiating with the debt companies to bring the debt down so we can close the mortgages. Because otherwise, if you couldn't get the debt down, you couldn't close the mortgages. So I opened up this company in Edge in 1995 with the sole purpose of, you know what, I'm going to do this for mortgage companies. And so we did that. We became a debt arbitration company, essentially.
Yeah.
So, And I built that business. It was growing little by little. I've always had bootstrap businesses. And I went to a trade show in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and sometime in 1997. And 3 or 4 months later, I get a phone call from the senior VP of a bank who says he wants to buy the company.
Wow.
So I tell him I'm not ready to sell the company. This is what I do. I like what I'm doing. He says, all right, how about this? How about if we invest in the company? So this was a bank. They weren't lending me money. They were investing in the company. I said, sure, you want to give me $500,000? I'll take $500,000. I took the money. We grew the company. We grew it from $500,000 of revenue, and we almost ran out of the money. We tried every iteration of everything we could possibly do. And then at one point we said, all right, we have this relationship with the bank. I think I can develop a system that's mind-blowing to this industry where we can work with people that aren't necessarily getting loans. In other words, work with just the average person that's in debt that wants to get out of debt. So we ended up developing a system with the bank, and that passed all state laws and everything else. And we ended up growing the company within a very short time, rapidly, from 500,000 to $6 million a year in revenue, which is a lot of money when you're a service. What helped us considerably at that time is 98 was the start of Google. And basically we could have had as many leads as I had about 20 salespeople, and if they couldn't pronounce the name of the person of the lead they got, they would just crumple it up and throw it in the garbage. We had so many leads, and the leads were like almost at zero cost. It was almost nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So we grew the company. We had over 90 employees. And to make a long story, I'm probably longer than it should be already, but
it's all right. It's good.
in 2007, and we grew it in 2007. I'm in a conference room, and this is going to be to the ashes part of the story. I'm in the conference room. I get a knock on the door from one of my employees. I'm in a meeting. It's an important meeting, or so I thought. He goes, no, you got to come out here. I go out there, and there's boxes at my door. A box 2 feet high, 5 feet wide of boxes. I look in. We were being sued by the FTC.
Oh man.
That's an experience nobody should ever have. My heart sunk, and in a way, I thought, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I knew this kind of thing could happen, because we were one of the first in the industry to really open up that industry. But there was a lot of copycats in that industry, and some of them were not good players. They were coming from other industries, and the FTC had started going after some of those companies. And so I said, we're one of the more prominent ones. I think we're going to be a target. And lo and behold, we were a target. Now, companies get sued all the time by the FTC. Google gets it, Microsoft has gotten it, all get it. They pay their millions of dollars of fines, and they continue on. And my background is I'm a battler. I'm competitive. So I said, what can I do to fight this thing? So I contacted, through the help of a friend, I found an FTC attorney, and I go, what can I do to fight this thing? I know we didn't do anything wrong. And he goes, whether you think you did anything wrong or not, the FTC can probably find something that you did wrong. And they likely did. And he said, you'd have to pay as a retainer $1 million just to stay in the battle. And that was a gut punch. I didn't have $1 million. I was recently working on other projects. I invested my own money into it and everything else. I didn't have $1 million. So I had to have the most heartbreaking meeting with my employees I ever had to have, telling people that they're going to be out of work, and this was the end of the road for the company. It was a 12-year-old company. It certainly wasn't a fly-by-night company. And even the people at the FTC, as they're going through their stuff, they're saying, you know what? We shouldn't have come after you, because we had overboard. The thing I understand is people, and I knew right away we were dealing with individuals that are in distress, that they're deep in debt. And I said, I want to make sure people never misunderstand what it is that we do. So the first thing is, in the contract, I had one page of bullet points that just described everything, the pros and the cons of what can happen as part of this strategy. I also had, for every person that signed up, I had a recording system set up so that we had a verification call where we went over those steps and got them verbally to acknowledge it. At the end of the day, did we have salespeople that, whenever you pay salespeople commission, are vulnerable to people trying too hard? Did I have that? Probably. But it was a damn shame, because the people came to us were never hurt until the FTC lawsuit, because that's really when they lost their money, because the FTC just froze all the accounts. And up until then, these people were having services done for them. But it is what it is. But I felt bad for the people. I felt bad for the employees. I felt bad for myself. For the first time, the day after I had to walk away from that business, I had to figure out what I was going to do.
Yeah. Obviously, it's such an emotional roller coaster, I'm sure, of feeling like you made it really at that level. Like you said, 6 million in a service business, and there's a lot of margin there, and you're helping a lot of people. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
what for you looking back now, what do you think was, whether it was part of that or maybe even in your FLEXXBUY endeavor, what was something that you did right back then? You pointed out that you were crossing T's and dotting I's, but as far as like building a business, someone's listening right now, they're not at $1 million in revenue. They're looking for that one nugget that you're going to give to them. What was something that a good decision that you made in the midst of all that?
Well, I made a lot of good decisions. The thing because we were partners with a bank, I felt like I had to go the extra mile as far as really covering our butts. So I really did
Right.
that. When we started selling, when selling really started taking off, I said, you know what? I know every one of these people should not be doing this. There's some people where you get applications, somebody has $3,000 of debt. For God's sakes, don't enter into a program that's going to destroy your credit for $3,000. At the same time, you have people that are so upside down, they really need bankruptcy. So I said, I made a rule right out of the chute, and it cost us money. I said, you know what? I want to decline 20% of the applications that come to us. I want to decline them. I want you to find the 20% that don't belong in this program and decline them, because I know there's people that don't belong here, and we were doing fine. We had no shortage of people that wanted to sign up for our program because people were in such dire straits. We did some good things in that regard. We did good things as far as marketing goes. We had some, like I said, Google, we had it captured until it wasn't anymore. And after a while, people
Right.
caught up to it and leads
Yeah, of
became
course.
more expensive, but we did some great things there. I had great people. I had great employees, and the thing I like is at that time we had it's like I said, at the peak, we had 94 employees. If I had a good person that just wasn't fitting what they were doing, I would try to find some other department to put them in, because I'll
Right.
take a good person that's trying and try to find a fit rather than somebody who's cocky and not a good team player who's competent, because I just felt that was a thing I should do. But we did a lot of good things, and it's a good question, because when you're in the middle of the rubble, it's really hard to appreciate it.
Right.
After it happened, and I say to this day, for the 3 years afterwards, I had probably post-traumatic stress syndrome,
Yeah.
because it was a really traumatic experience. And what got me through it was my family. I really did have, without being too cliche, my wife was great. She was part of the company too, and she got caught up in it, but she was great. And so I had a good support system. But for a long time, it was hard to look at the good things that we did, but
Yeah.
I know we did good things.
Oh yeah. You don't build a $6 million business on accident.
No, you
So my
can. You know what? Seriously, you can, because there were other companies that weren't doing the right thing. There's that industry, like I said, had become a Wild West, and while we weren't the right target, the industry probably was the right target at the time. And they did change the laws afterwards. And I have my own theories as to why they did it. As we all know, the financial crash was going to happen the next year. A couple of years beforehand, they changed the bankruptcy laws, making it harder to file bankruptcy. So I think they were cleaning up for the creditors a little bit from that standpoint. But you know what? You can make $6 million and not do the right thing. I definitely believe that. But you can't stay in business for 12 years and not do the right thing. That's the thing. So we were not a fly-by-night. We didn't open the year before with the sole purpose of making a killing. We fought our way to the top of that and stayed in there for 12 years, and we'd still be in business today if not for that. But the lesson I also did learn is, and you asked me early in the beginning of this interview, what keeps me going? I said, I love it. I really, and this is going to sound crazy, but after the dust settled and I had my pity party and I felt sorry for the employees, I was relieved, because I'd come to realize that I really didn't enjoy that business anymore. And the lesson I learned is, and I had become somewhat disengaged from it because of that. I'd started other side projects, and because whether it was the atmosphere of the industry or whatever, I just didn't really enjoy that business. I should have gotten out before, and we had ways to get out, but I should have gotten out earlier. Because if you don't love it anymore, if you don't feel you can stay engaged, you either have to find a way to stay engaged or get out.
Yeah, no, that's so good, because even in my own story, the pieces or the businesses that I've been involved with, they either keep my attention or I'm looking for the next thing. And I think that part of that is purpose. And part of that is, even early on, some of those businesses, even though I may or may not own them currently, or it was a product that maybe I didn't necessarily personally associate with, those were building blocks for my history so that I could do what I'm doing now and then beyond. So I think that all it's applicable. I'm curious now, like, with your perspective of starting over, like literally.
I literally did have to start over.
Yeah.
And it wasn't overnight either. It took me a long time to get my footing, but yeah.
Yeah. So not only have you been successful, but then you started over and you've been successful again. And so we've talked about the good decision that you made. What was something that you did that you haven't repeated, or that you specifically tried to not repeat to speed up time, or what it was a mistake that you made that you learned from that you didn't have to learn again? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I think making sure that I maintain my interest and stay in my lane. I'm a firm believer in staying in my lane. And when I say that, it doesn't mean you can't work on other things.
Sure.
It's got to be towards a common outcome. And
Right.
the thing that I didn't do was I went off the beaten path and left myself exposed. And I'm not saying that if I was engaged, things would have happened differently, because I think there was an agenda but there were things that did happen while I wasn't fully engaged that I wouldn't have put up with. But other than that, I try to stay in my lane now. I've had a lot of opportunities of people coming to me and say, hey, I got this, I got that, you know what, I'm doing good. Let me stay in my lane. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yep. 100%. I agree. What would you say just around decision making is a process, or do you have certain steps that you follow now that the listener can learn just from your vast experience?
Yeah, I've always been in businesses, and this included, where there's no price sheet. There's no standard. You can't go and say, all right, if you're an accountant, you can basically see what the market bears and what pricing to charge. My whole thing has always been iterate, and try to keep on changing and working towards zero friction. Because, when you have a business that charges money, and out of necessity, because we bootstrapped FLEXXBUY, we had to charge a setup fee, we had to charge a monthly subscription fee, we had to charge fees associated with the success, and it was a necessity. And you have to also charge some fees, because you got to pay salespeople, right? So there's
Right.
your marketing, and we also have independent sales partners that bring us business. So we have to charge some fees in order to satisfy that ecosystem.
Right.
But anytime you charge fees, if you don't realize that you're creating friction, you're kidding yourself. Zero fees creates zero friction, and there's downside to that as well. You want to have people with skin in the game, but too high fees will create a lot of friction. I'm a firm believer in iterating, and then testing and iterating and testing until you zero in on the optimum point. And the other thing is, and I'll probably talk about this later again, but I also believe in establishing demand before you spend too much time on your product. When we started FLEXXBUY and I decided I was going to have a platform, I didn't know what the demand was going to be. Like I said, I was going after a sector of business out there that never had financing before. I had to educate them. I didn't know what the utilization was going to be. I said,
Right.
before I spend a ton of time on the technology side of this, let me find out the demand. So initially I didn't have a great product, and that was okay. Because I burned through sales, but I didn't have a great product. We literally were like, I had my son entering in applications manually and making behind the scenes. But the thing I realized is, no matter how bad the product was, I never had trouble selling it. There was demand out there. People,
Right.
once businesses understood, and they understood where their competition was, there was a demand for the product. And once we had the demand, that's when we really spent a lot of time on the product.
Yeah, I think that a lot of businesses can learn something from that. I can remember when I built my first sales course, it was version 1, right? And for a lot of times I was very self-conscious about, how it wasn't flashy or interactive or whatever in comparison to the market. And it's since been rolled into some other products that we do. And I have a buddy, he actually is a partner in one of my real estate businesses, and we're adding some salespeople, and I wanted him to go through some just basic sales training, and he's never done it. So I gave him the link to the course, and he's going through it going, dude, this is incredible. Like, just meaty information. And it's been years since I've really gone back through the detail of it. And just hearing that years later, when I was just so, it's version 1, it sucks. It doesn't, because, and the reality of it is that you're still serving the market. And of course, version 2, version 3, you got to keep the thing rolling, and the experience or the customer journey getting better and better. But get started is what I'm hearing you say first.
Yeah. And listen, when you're in the service business, and whether it's doing what I'm doing or doing what you're doing, we're in the service business. It's either about having information that other people don't have, or providing a convenience to what other people can do, just that they don't have the time or the energy to do it, or the wherewithal to do it.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to that. And I'm sure you were as smart back in version 1. Maybe you probably have more experience now, but your intelligence level and the way to present was probably there for version 1 too. And it's funny you said that, because I do a lot of live webinars and recordings and things like that, and I can never go back I hate my voice so much, I will never listen to this podcast. I'll never go back. I never go back and listen to my stuff or watch my stuff. And I really proofread. I send it to my daughter just to edit for me. But
yeah, you're right. We all deal with it. The almost imposter syndrome of, I don't like it or whatever. But the reality of it is that it's delivering to the right people. It's delivering.
Right.
And so that's the confidence that we have to hold. Even in this podcast, there's going to be people who pass over, and there's been people who are like, wow, Bob, thanks for sharing. And that's why we do it. It's not even about sharing necessarily. It's the same thing in business. It's like, we're not necessarily trying to serve everybody. We're trying to serve the right ones. Like you said, we got to find the 20%, kick them out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. You got to find that sweet spot. You have to have thick skin in business and just know that as long as you keep expectations at the right level. It's like I've done after I was in between things after 2007. I spent 2 or 3 years going to a lot of trade shows and conferences, really educating myself. I really spent a lot of time just trying to learn about some of the things I haven't been exposed to, focusing on my other business. And I usually went to those shows and I said, if I can learn one thing that makes a difference and meet one person that makes a difference, that's all I really need. I don't need every single second to be mind blowing. I just need one thing to make a difference.
Yeah, love that. Okay, I'm going to transition here to the speed round. First question I want to know is, in this business, this finance, helping your clients finance their clients, what's the one trackable metric, the one thing that you track forever and ever?
Yeah, there's so many. I can usually gauge based on loan applications. And although because of the recent macroeconomic conditions that are out there, that's been a little bit, but I would say loan applications, if there's one metric I had to look at.
Yeah, pipeline, baby. Either pipeline's full or pipeline's not full.
Exactly right.
Okay, very good. What book would you recommend, Bob, for a six-figure business owner? Or I know you're a big podcaster, so maybe it's a book or maybe it's a podcast.
Yeah, you know what? It's been a while since I read a book, so I'm going to talk about 2 books.
Okay.
I mentioned a little bit of The Lean Startup by Eric Rice.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how to, and it really taught me a lot because I had made the mistake before of not going with the minimal viable product. So it taught me a lot. And the other, for a total different reason, was PayPal Wars. It's an older book written not too long after PayPal was actually formed. And if you want to understand the perseverance of a business, and the interesting thing about that was how PayPal went in with one idea and iterated to something totally different. It's just a fascinating book.
Love that. We'll put both of those in the show notes. I'm all about reiterating or iterating and changing and pivoting, and not just for the sake of doing it, but until you find that place where there it goes.
You don't know what you don't know. Until you start taking that journey, you're going to come across obstacles, and the path from the start to where you got to be isn't a straight line. It's a jagged, it goes forward, it goes backwards, it goes sideways, it goes all different directions.
That's right. What do you think about intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs?
I think it's a great idea, and I did a lot of it. I don't do as much of it anymore. I used to do a lot of trade shows. I think COVID took away some of my chops when it came to live networking, but I'm all for it. I like it. And it's just not a thing I get to do. I get to do a lot of. Back in the day when I used to do a lot of trade shows, and I went back to when I was working with the mortgage companies, and I looked back one day and I said, I got 200 mortgage companies I'm working with. And I went back and to the origination of them, and 75% of them came from trade shows, came from face to face. So it's hard to, and I think we didn't have Zoom back then. Those kind of interactions make the same kind of inroads, but looking somebody in the eyes and having that kind of discussion cannot be replaced by emails. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
That's good. The question around operations I'm going to throw at you is this: if you only had 1 hour each week to work on your business, Bob, what would you do in that 1 hour to successfully run your business like you do now?
Yeah, 30 minutes. I would check my key metrics, and I have a bunch of them between how many new businesses we're bringing in, the applications, the fundings, that kind of thing. And then in the next 30 minutes, I would do marketing tweets to adjust based on what I just learned in the first 30 minutes.
Love it. I love it. You got to know if the pipeline's full, and then you got to go fill the pipeline.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
Spoken like a genuine entrepreneur. That's what we care about. Is the train going to continue? But that train also serves our clients and our teams if it keeps going. So I can appreciate a good sales pipeline. Last question for you, Bob. Are you ready?
Sure.
If you could whisper in the younger Bob's ear, what would you tell him?
I would say do the exact same thing you're about to do, because it's interesting because I asked myself that question. Obviously, I went through my family, we went through a pretty bad time, but
Right.
we're in such a great place now. If I could have changed if any one of those things would have been different, I don't know if I'd be right here where I am now. I think I'd go through the pain again and just end up where I am. You always have to ask yourself, you like who you are. And if you like who you are, it wasn't a straight line. There's a lot of things, a lot of good things, probably a lot of bad things that have to happen for you to get
Right.
exactly where you are.
Yeah, I love that. Bob, you've been absolutely incredible here today with experience and inspiration and just the telling of the story, man. The rise, the fall, the rise again. So inspirational. How can the listener find you? Of course, if they need funding for their business or for their clients, or if they just want to reach out to you and connect with you as an
The website is FLEXXBUY.com, FLEXXBUY.com. They can reach me. My email address is bob.l@flexbuy.com. They can reach me on LinkedIn. Just search for me. I'm there. And those are the best ways.
Perfect. I'll put it all in the show notes, or my team will. And so that way they can easily connect with you. And
good.
Bob, we wish you nothing but success and blessing on your family. Again, I'm going to have to pick your brain over the course of time as we get to know each other better about working with your kids and all that fun stuff. I just think that's so cool.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for listening to Gathering the Kings. We hope you got a ton of value today and learned a thing or two about taking your business to 7 figures and beyond. If you desire more and want a community around you to help you get there, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. That's gatheringthekings.com. And I want you to apply for our next Becoming a King 90-day intensive. We are extremely exclusive by nature as a group. What that means is that we're really wanting only the entrepreneurs who take their business and targets super serious to apply. So if that's you, you think you got what it takes to level up your business, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com and apply. And we will see you on the other side.